This video is brought to you by Incogni. Hey there, before I get to the fun stuff today, I want to talk about something a little bit more serious and something I have personal experience with, and that's having your data stolen. The internet moves fast these days, and your data is going along with it. Your personal information is being sold and used by data brokers and whoever else might want to use it without your approval. This leads to spam, phone calls, and emails, and raises the chance of identity theft. What's more, nearly anyone can access that data online, including landlords, bosses, and even people who would want to use it for stalking and harassment. And data breaches continue to get more common every year. According to the annual data breach report by the Identity Theft Resource Center, data breaches increased 72% in 2023 alone compared to 2022. When I first started doing my undercover and investigative work, I had no idea just how much of my data was out there, and that left the door open for people to personally harass me and members of my family. This isn't part of the ad, this is something that actually happened. And when it did, I knew I needed to get more serious about my online security. Which is why I'm proud to have this video sponsored by Incogni. Incogni helped me take back control of my online data with a variety of tools and statistics that show you where your data is being used and allowing you to put a stop to it. You can see what private or public databases have your data and the risks associated with those companies, and even get an estimate of how much time Incogni saves you by going after data brokers most people don't have the time or energy to go after themselves. For example, I've saved an estimated 367 hours with Incogni. And Incogni allows you to tailor your data experience, letting you choose multiple phone numbers, addresses, and emails that you can get removed to help keep your data safe. To get started taking your data back, check out the link down below or go to incogni.com/deaddomain for 60% off an annual plan now by using the code DEADDOMAIN. Once more, that is code DEADDOMAIN at incogni.com/deaddomain to get 60% off an annual plan and start taking your data back from identity thieves and information brokers. If you've been following my channel for a while, you probably know one of my hobbies is Magic the Gathering. If you watch my streams, you may have seen me crack a Shouldered on stream, or you might know about the Magic the Gathering podcast I do with my friend Bugs Matrix called Pod Talk. Go subscribe and listen now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on YouTube, all edited by Rosa of the Composting Podcast. Now, I've on and off played Magic since I was a kid, but it wasn't just Magic cards I collected in my youth. No, I grew up in the fever pitch of the post-Pokemon collectible boom where everybody wanted a sweet piece of that trading card pie. This fertile ground gave birth to plenty of games you probably remember from your own childhood, including Yu-Gi-Oh! And other properties that tried to get in on the collectible anime craze like Beyblade and Bakugan. But then there were a ton of card games you probably don't remember, like the Austin Powers TCG. Remember the Bionicle TCG? How about Harry Potter? Naruto? Well, I had at least a couple cards from all of these, and you know what else I collected? Redemption. You know, Redemption, the entirely Christian faith-based reaction to Magic the Gathering that replaces slivers and elves and Phyrexians with, like, people who heard voices thousands of years ago. And replaces kick-ass artifacts like Sword of Once and Future with cards like Girdle. In retrospect, as somebody who's no longer in the thralls of religious belief, it's kind of hilarious to open packs of this, especially compared to Magic the Gathering. Like, cracking a pack of Magic, you'll get a kick-ass demon named Varigoth, Blood Sky Sire, and cracking open a pack of Redemption, you'll just get, like, a guy named Jeremiah, Jerry for short. Now, I learned about this game technically when it was still in its heyday, but if you've never heard about it, that's probably because, unlike me, you didn't spend copious amounts of your childhood in Christian family bookstores. The one I spent a lot of time in as a kid in Linwood, Washington is now, ironically, a tabletop gaming spot where you can't buy Redemption, but you can buy Magic the Gathering. But when I was coming up, I actually didn't mind going to that bookstore because I could just go and look at Redemption cards. It's never been something that many stores would carry because I think they have to be specially ordered, so you couldn't really find them anywhere else. Which is why I bet Christian bookstores were a big point of origin for many people who play this game. I'd get a couple packs for cheap, crack them, and do what every other kid who didn't have partners to play a card game with did. I'd just kind of look at them, Yeah, don't act like you were actually playing Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Since the age of 7. You know damn well 90% of the time you were just flipping through cards worth 40 cents, admiring them like you thought you had Smog's treasure. And then I just kind of like totally forgot Redemption existed for almost 2 decades until I decided to look it up, and apparently it's still getting new sets? What the fuck? At least the last set was in 2023, so relatively new, and I have it on good authority that there is a new set in the works, which does make it one of the longest running trading card games out there, up there with Pokemon and Magic the Gathering for sure. And it even has a modern competitive scene with people discussing deck building strategies, rankings, and a developing meta. So how is Redemption actually played? Well, it's actually kind of like a simplified Magic the Gathering, at least in the earliest incarnations, with a twist. Instead of multiple elements to draw mana from dividing a game, you basically just have good guys and bad guys standing in for Magic's creatures, with correlating strength and toughness equivalent to how Magic organizes their power and toughness. While there aren't elements, there are brigades that creatures can belong to, and additional enhancements that correlate to brigades and evil-good alignments. These are basically the spells of the game, but you're lacking the depth of Magic with its instant sorceries, enchantments, manas, auras, artifacts, and other stuff, making it an overall more stripped-down gaming experience. Another big difference is that, unlike Magic, there's no overall life total you're trying to wear down from an opponent. The goal is to get 5 lost souls to your side of the board. For the good guys, it's the Land of Redemption. For the bad guys, it's the Land of Bondage.
Kinky.
It's hell. It's meant to be hell. But, I mean, look, 90s Magic was pretty horny. Remember Earthbound? Or like any card with a goth baddie on it? But this game? Honestly, for a Christian card game purportedly about getting kids interested in the Bible, this thing is horny as heck. Now, the most interesting thing to talk about so far with Redemption is going to be the art, because it ranges in quality. A lot of it honestly feels like it could have been a vintage Magic the Gathering card in the late 90s, and I mean that in the best, weirdest way. There aren't any original flavor text to speak of, so all the text is just literally taken right from the Bible. But the art ranges wildly, making it an incredibly funny rabbit hole to go down, especially if you're hanging out with friends who have at least a passing familiarity with trading card games like Magic. Now, the easiest way to find a collection of Redemption cards to look at is going to be going on the parent company's website, threelionsgaming.com. This card game is so obscure, you're not going to be able to sort through a database on TCG Player or any other website like that. And the cards they have available are an absolute treasure trove of everything Redemption, the biblical card game, has to offer. Now, my personal favorites, and the cards I enjoyed most as a kid, are these ones clearly inspired by Todd McFarlane's 90s comic book art style, particularly Spawn. They mostly cast angels and demons as these muscle-bound badasses so cool they could only be called extreme, with the word being spelled with an X at the beginning. If I'm being honest, these were the cards that convinced me, hey, this could be cool when I was 9 years old. But I also thought Shadow the Hedgehog was the coolest character in fiction when I was 9. Which hasn't changed, actually. Now, after doing some digging, these are from Eternal Studios. A quick Google shows that Eternal Studios only really put out one short-lived comic series in 1995 called Archangels, which, judging by the similarities between the cover art of this collected volume and this angel card, is where a lot of this cool-looking art is probably from. So the Todd McFarlane analog makes a lot of sense. These are literally from 90s comic books. Now, these cards aside, the most jarring thing about Redemption is how much that art style varies. Because from these McFarlane-esque ripped demons and ancient evils, you can also just get, like, some guys. It turns out that that's actually what most of the Bible is about. In fairness, some of these cards are really pretty. They're evocative with their use of color and emotion. I remember this card, Burial, from when I was a kid. Now, the Lost Soul cards, which are essentially tokens you fight over in the game, feature some of my favorite art, like Miss Culture Vulture here, whose wings are on point, to be fair. The Lost Souls are all pretty well detailed and evocative with their art. Fittingly, some of the art for these cards gets pretty dark and brutal. I also love/hate the flavor for this Lost Soul that can only be rescued by a super strong hero. Like, they really put fat shaming in this Bible game for children. Jesus might be able to save your soul, but not if you can't lift your heavy ass. A lot of these cards simply use classic art or at least emulate a classical style, and the art in these cases can be downright gorgeous. It is unfortunately offset by the often garish design of the card borders. But then there is even more amateurish art, ranging from stuff that is downright laughable to genuinely charming. Goliath's armor, for example, looks like it could easily be from an early Magic set like Mirage. Divination looks like it could be an alternate art for Dark Ritual. This Lost Soul could easily sub in for Royal Assassin. Also, a lot of the Revelations cards kind of whip. But then there are the terrible, terrible ones, which just... I personally like this terrible card for Sodom because it's just like a brick wall. Like, this looks like a manual illustration for Daggerfall. A lot of the less appealing cards have this vaguely airbrushed, fuzzy art style that just looks like one of those 80s vans with a wizard riding a werewolf or something, but instead of your older brother taking you to a Judas Priest concert, you're going to Bible camp. Like, get a load of this guy. This guy looks like if Striper fought Conan the Barbarian. And when it comes to this treasure trove of goofy art, the longer you look, the more you'll find poor proportions, awkward angles, and bad shading taking up a lot of Redemption's art. Sometimes I straight up have no idea what they were even cooking. Like this CG rendered golden calf that's angled like Shinji having a breakdown in Evangelion. Or this one that looks like somebody just did a paint by numbers over a picture of grandma holding a baby. Or this picture of Mark, apparently last name Ruffalo, looking like someone just approached him with a timeshare opportunity. And then there's this guy. Now, the blank expressions and awkward poses contribute a lot to the humor of browsing these cards, especially if you have no context for the Bible stories they represent. The other very funny part is the names, like Baal worship. No, not that kind of Baal worship. Get your mind out of the gutter. And then the legions of biblical characters that make up the glut of this game. So instead of like goblins or elves, you just got 1,000 cards named like Martha. I will say that this might be one of the only times I've gotten really picky about font and lettering in a TCG. Magic's font usage is generally so good and clean while also being pretty iconic, and Redemption's just feels kind of like an afterthought. For a lot of the early sets, because the flavor text was the Bible verse that the card applied to, they decided to just put the text over the art instead of doing what Magic did and make the box at the bottom larger to encompass that text. Over time, this would change and they'd adapt some other fun Magic the Gathering-isms like having borderless style art cards that do look better. Now, when I started looking into Redemption, I quickly went down a rabbit hole, and that led me to not only buying 2 starter decks, but 4 packs of sealed cards, which I opened. And some of those packs were from a thing called Angel Wars. You see, as a kid, I had some of these cards, but no familiarity with this property. But having now dedicated, I'll be honest, too much time to looking into it, Angel Wars is kind of like... It's kind of like Warhammer 40k by way of Bible Man, if all the characters and proportions were drawn by renowned comic artist Brianna Wu. Being from an associated company, Angel Wars got a dedicated tie-in set. Not only was this the only wholly fictional universe to have a Redemption set, but it also featured a bizarre assortment of sci-fi staples like alien creatures and robotic demons, meaning that if, like I recommended above, you decide to go browse through old Redemption cards out of morbid curiosity, you'll just be scrolling through a bunch of dudes from the ancient Middle East to get slapped in the face by this homunculi. So I have several theories on what actually happened with this TCG set because looking at it is fascinating to me. The actual art used for the card seems to be divided between embarrassingly low-resolution screenshots, concept art, and renders drawn in the classical stylings of books like Learn to Draw Manga Volume 3. Even though some of the other Redemption sets had some rough art, this particular set looks so undercooked, I half expected Gordon Ramsay to pop out of the packs I was opening and yell at me. Now, what I think happened here is that this TCG set was rushed to coincide with the then in development TV show Angel Wars, which was having its own nightmarish development as the company attempted to stake a claim as a multimedia franchise. According to the Redemption Card Wiki, the cards released in 2004, but only included art and assets from the first 2 episodes of the TV show. The first episodes would be released on DVD as Guardian Force, with follow-up episodes released in 2005 under Guardian Force 2. But the show didn't run consistently from 2004. There's evidence out there for planned toys that never materialized, and this press release on archive.org, dated for 2005, advertises the second in a 3-DVD trilogy, with the first few episodes, I'm assuming, making up that first DVD release. So while the parent company was clearly aiming to make this a proper series on TV, or at least with wider distribution, it tripped up somewhere along the way, leading to all the episodes being put onto DVDs and sold as movies. An archived version of the original Angel Wars website features a news update in 2009 that Fox had picked up the series for distribution and that 2009 would be seeing a new Angel Wars film. Now, while this was actually released, it was under the Fox Faith banner, which when I first heard, I thought was a otherkin trans girl from Ohio. Turns out it was actually Fox's short-lived attempt at a PureFlix or Angel Studio style Christian media outlet. Now, Fox Faith started in 2006, had a handful of movies, and stopped making things in 2009, so I'm willing to bet at least part of the weird production shifting of Angel Wars and its subsequent ending had to do with whatever happened here. The last update on the archived Angel Wars website is from 2011, promising new stories from a newly founded animation studio, but that seemed to never have materialized. Hey, remember when this rabbit hole was about a knockoff Magic the Gathering? So it seems like the trading card development team had to work with whatever little assets they were giving, including some drawings that are very obviously just original concept renders or concept sketches. This rush would also explain the low resolution of the screenshots used, as well as the overall unpolished look of this set. But bizarre rabbit holes with poorly animated TV shows and short-lived comic books aside, I was stunned to find out that there is still an active community for Redemption. I wanted to reach out to the people who had a hand in this game, and particularly the Angel Wars set, out of sheer curiosity, but information on any aspects of it are incredibly hard to find. Normally, if I'm doing video game documentaries, I can search LinkedIn for company names and histories, but there's hardly anyone who seems to have been associated with Angel Wars, the company that produced it, or Redemption on these websites. And when it comes to Angel Wars, there's not even really like an ironic fandom outside of a couple YouTube movie reviews. But the same cannot be said for Redemption. There are multiple active forums for this game, as well as apparently modern championships and a regular podcast talking about the game strategies and an evolving meta? Land of Redemption, for example, is one of the biggest websites for the game. It appears to be run by Tyler Stevens, who is advertised on the website as Tyler, aka Mr. Hiatus, is one of the greatest Redemption champions of all time. He is a multiple-time national champion. Tyler currently is a Redemption elder, as well as part of the card design team. He passionately contributes in every way he can to better the Redemption community. Now, Tyler writes a ton of articles for the site, but he's not the only one. There's apparently an active Discord, and this website's full of articles talking about different formats, trading strategies, the game's meta, and more. So at this point, I had so many questions for the fan base of this game. Did some of them play other trading card games first? Were they only allowed to play this as a kid? Did their parents tell them Magic was demonic, despite Redemption having literal demons? Did the Eternal Studios angels influence their sexuality as well from a young age? After searching high and low, I found a Discord link where I was able to ask none other than Tyler himself all of my burning questions about this biblical trading card community.
Tell me about how you got into the game.
My grandparents owned a Christian bookstore in Florida growing up and sold Redemption. I was young and didn't know how to play, but I was fascinated with the game. My cousin and I attempted to learn to play, but it was at a very basic level. Shortly afterwards, our family moved to Georgia, and my grandparents did a family reunion while a Christian bookstore conference was going. I walked around the conference floor room, and I recognized Redemption at one of the booths. I was about 13 at the time. I met the creator of the game, and I played with his son and learned the game from a great player. My parents met him and exchanged emails. He was an adult, and he got me connected to groups of players in my area.
Are there many players who are interested in other collectible card games?
We have competitive Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, Animo, and Flesh and Blood players, as well as a slew of other games that people play. We also have people who play other games that got into Redemption because they love our community. As a Christian and a card gamer, it's extremely difficult to find a group of people that share your belief and also love to nerd out. Sometimes our community gets bullied simply because the source material from the game is the Bible. We have non-Christians who play the game as well, which I love to see, because that means the game is fun and strategic, in my opinion.
How has the game changed and evolved over the years?
Where do I begin? When Redemption came out in 1995, second longest running game to Magic, nearly all cards had no abilities. Now we have a keyword for cards with no abilities, and we can manipulate no special ability cards in different ways. The game has evolved in many ways, from strategy, complexity, deck diversity, aesthetics, and themes, but also in rules and standardization. Cards look very professional and are made with a high quality to the best of our ability as volunteers. We've made the font larger and more bold for easier reading, simplified overall abilities, and brought in new abilities, all for easier access to the game and standardization.
Are there any well-known jokes and references in the community based on things like card art, usefulness, etc.? For example, Magic the Gathering has a popular card named Grey Merchant of Asphodel, who's commonly known as Gary.
Q. There was a card made years ago, and the ability and art was a bit odd. Since then, we've had ongoing Q jokes and bringing back Q as an ultra rare or a promo in a future set. Buckler is a great story. The original set had a card named Buckler that, for all intents and purposes, really didn't do anything. Then Buckler got a reprint in a very popular set named Warriors, and it was still horrible. It got another reprint, and somehow still was horrible. Buckler has been an ongoing joke, but then the design team made a new Buckler, and it's amazing. There's other jokes and ongoing stories. Some deal with a card that had to receive errata 7 or more times. A New Beginning was the card. And in our message boards, articles the design team writes, and comments in our Discord about spoiling information for future cards, people will notice edited by Roses. Roses is an acronym for Royal Order for the Secrecy of Expansion Sets. There's numerous inside jokes with players of past and present. The community is very close and has an amazing group of volunteers and players that gives so much to the game, which has been a reason it's been going for over 25 years. We've had players leave due to life circumstances only to come back 10 years later. We've had multiple people meet their future husband and wife through this game, and they originally met at a tournament. We've had players have a family and then their kids go on to play. It's been amazing what God has done with our small community and this game, and so long as we continue to honor him, I believe we'll continue to see growth and enjoyment from this game.
Now, I want to thank Tyler for his time and taking effort to honestly answer my inquiries, because honestly, I can tell how much passion he has as not just a veteran player, but a designer for this game. And it takes a lot of trust to look at a channel like mine and open up about something that can be easy to point and laugh at. On its face, explaining Redemption can elicit an incredulous reaction from people. What do you mean there's a Christian trading card game? Is there a Jesus trading card? Especially for people inclined to joke about Christian media, which is generally pretty poor in quality, at least based on the movies I've reviewed. And it might just be easy because of that to dismiss this game entirely, writing it off as a ridiculous cheap cash-in. But I think there's actually plenty of evidence to the contrary. Through a dedicated community that isn't just Christian or looking to spread their religion, but based in a mutual love of strategy and tabletop gaming, Redemption has managed to survive for over 20 years in an incredibly crowded gaming space, and from that angle, I have a much harder time knocking the game. After doing so much research and even buying packs and starter decks for myself, there was really only one way to see if the game was actually fun and interesting enough to play as a non-Christian, and that was to get some of my Magic the Gathering friends together and play for ourselves. So, how did it go? Well, as we're all pretty experienced Magic players, it caught on quick. We were primarily playing with starter decks, in fairness, with a few cards from packs to swap out and strategize with at least a little. So was it an ideal starter situation? Probably not. Did we have fun? Yeah. If for no other reason than it's fun to play with friends and learn a new game, which is what a good trading card game should be all about. As fun as it is to collect expensive cardboard, trade, pull great cards, and yes, even play stacks, it's not what gaming is actually about. The core of any gaming experience is going to be its players, and it survives on how passionate they are, how they evolve with the game, and how the game evolves with them. So even if my experiences playing Redemption weren't the ideal way to play the game, it doesn't change the fact that it's been going for decades now, despite the bizarre tangents, tie-ins, obscurity, and baffling artistic decisions. And that isn't due to its Christian roots, but its popularity with its players who remain passionate about it. And honestly, after having fun with it, I'm kind of glad I gave it a chance. Now, more importantly, I do have ideas for other religions we can establish based off of trading card games, which I would like to now share with you.
And also, don't forget to go to incogni.com/deaddomain and use promo code deaddomain to get a great deal and start taking back your cybersecurity.
Hey y'all, and thank you very much for watching this latest weird deep dive passion project of mine that I've been working on for a couple weeks, and I am happy to finally bring to you all. I do want to also thank friend of the channel, Queen Coke Francis, who you should absolutely go check out and like and subscribe to. They were kind enough to give me some help on the Q&A section of my interview with Tyler. I've been working on this as a little bit of a more lighthearted pseudo-research project, something just to poke around with as everything else seems to be burning down, and I'm hoping that it can also give some members of my audience a bit of a needed reprieve from all of the awful stuff going on. And let me know what you think of videos like this, because I honestly would like to do more and need the views to justify it. So as always, be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments, help spread it around, engage with it. And thank you very much for watching.